Everyone loves the euphoria that comes from solving a tricky puzzle, the feeling of staring at a problem rifling through your inventory, and the eureka moment of realizing exactly what you need to do to progress the game. The only problem occurs when you think of the right answer, go to solve the puzzle, and it's actually the wrong answer. In this video, we'll be rounding up 8 puzzles we thought we'd solved, only it turned out we hadn't. 8 infuriating, obtuse, and utterly illogical brain teasers that made us question our sanity and our cognitive abilities. And worst of all, most of these puzzles are from a pre-internet era, so you couldn't even just Google the answer. Here are the 8 hardest puzzles in the history of gaming. The first Broken Sword game is a triumph, a mixture of religion and conspiracy that did Templars years before Dan Brown ever thought about Grail mysteries or Da Vinci codes. But the hardest puzzle in Broken Sword isn't a cryptex or a cipher, it's a goat, a really annoying goat. When hero George Stobart visits Ireland, he has to get past this furious animal to reach an excavation site. Unfortunately, every time you try, the goat smashes into you, sending you flying. To solve this, you have to let the goat hit you, immediately click on the plough, which you previously couldn't interact with, then watch as George sprints across the screen to move it. After that, it makes sense, but the reason this one is so hard is that it seems to break the established rules, changing the pace of the game. The puzzle was tweaked for the re-release, proving that we were right all along. Next, we've got the Shakespeare puzzle from Silent Hill 3, which involves you deliberately placing the bard's books in the wrong order so you can open a locked door with a numerical code. On normal mode, it's pretty simple. You just shove the books in, read the code on the spine, and enter it. Job done. On hard mode, however, it requires prior knowledge of Shakespeare and some serious lateral thinking. You have to decipher a poem which obliquely references each book, arrange them in the correct order, then swap and subtract the numbers according to a long, convoluted poem. Things like 1 vengeful man spilt blood for 2, which means you have to double Hamlet, which is anthology 4, so the first number actually becomes 8, obviously. Alternatively, you can just Google it, because the answer will always be 8352. The Longest Journey is a genuinely brilliant adventure game representing everything that's good about the genre, but by God, the rubber duck puzzle can do one.
It's a rubber ducky, helplessly trapped under that rusty old grill.
It involves retrieving a key that's lodged in a railroad track. Now, if you're logical, you'll be thinking of all the adventure game things you can do to reach a key. But if you've played The Longest Journey, you'll be thinking about a duck, a rubber duck. We'll try and break this one down, but truthfully, it's a video in itself. You have to use bread to attract a seagull, to move a grating to dislodge the duck. And then you use the duck with a clamp to make a fishing pole to get the key. Except the reality is that it's much more complicated than this, and somehow, if you can believe it, makes even less sense.
It's a pretty cool catch.
And best of all, at this point in the game, you're still just an art student with no desire to save the world. You've literally got no reason to try this other than curiosity. Another legendary nonsensical puzzle comes from Gabriel Knight 3. In fact, this one is widely regarded as one of the most painful adventure game puzzles ever because it forces you to disguise yourself as someone else, so far, so adventure gamey, and then change the way they look to match your stupid disguise, which, on a fundamental level, is not how disguises are supposed to work. Gabriel needs a motorbike to continue the story, so he has to disguise himself as Detective Mosley. To do that, you have to have a moustache, which in itself is massively convoluted, but you'd never think to do that because Mosley doesn't have a moustache. Instead, you draw one on his driving license to match your stupid disguise. And in fact, if you got this one right first time, it might actually be proof there's something seriously wrong with you. Fez is one long, cute, utterly mind-boggling challenge, but unlike many of the games on this list, at least it has the satisfaction of the puzzles actually making sense. Once you've deciphered them, there's a mad logic behind the cryptography, and it usually doesn't feel like you've stumbled across the solution by accident. That said, it's possible to watch Fez being played and not understand, even on the most basic level, what the flipping heck is going on. And the most telling example of this is the black monolith puzzle. Again, this is so hard, it would take an entire video to explain, we'd probably still get it wrong, and even then there might be another even deeper meaning that only Phil Fish knows about. It was only solved thanks to brute force input by the community, and even then, there might be more to it. Now that's what we call a hard puzzle. Riven's predecessor Myst had its fair share of cerebral brain teasers, but nothing touches Riven's stone circles. The game itself is a beautiful, almost zen-like experience that taxes the brain in refreshing ways, and the stone circles act almost like a final boss. Like many of the other puzzles in Riven, the solution is based on your prior exploration, rather than simply working out what's in front of you. If you hear the solution, which we won't spoil here, it sounds just like a case of pressing stones in the correct order, but it actually requires precision, attention to detail, and a comprehensive understanding of rotating balls. Honestly, it's much, much cooler than we've made it sound. When Grim Fandango got remastered in 2015, everybody who played it before laughed about the fresh puzzle hell that awaited new players. We'd been there, done that, and got the Manny Calavera t-shirt. There are loads of examples in the game that could make this list, but let's go with the cat race puzzle, 1 because it's horrible, and 2 because we like cats.
Wow, somebody really liked this cat.
Unless you're paying strict attention to everything that happens in this game, you'll probably miss the hint that tells you what to look for, so you know which day the race in question takes place. And there's a whole conversation with Max, which explains everything that's surprisingly easy to bypass. All this means that most people who solve this puzzle, usually by looking it up on the internet, don't even understand the logic behind it, which truthfully is quite understandable. Let's finish with the most famously difficult puzzle of all time. If we're going to talk about infuriating adventure games, we need to talk about Sierra. Way back in 1984, they brought out the first King's Quest, which set the bar high for how the hell do I do that puzzles. And the hardest one of all involved guessing the name of a mysterious gnome. Your character, Sir Graham, meets a gnome who, you guessed it, challenges him to guess his name. Now, as anyone who's ever read any fairy tales will know, the answer in these sort of riddles is usually Rumpelstiltskin, although even that requires prior knowledge. But it's even more difficult than that. There's a piece of paper in a witch's house that reads, "Sometimes it's wise to think things backwards." So naturally you assume the answer is Rumpelstiltskin backwards, which spells Nick Stiltseltmer, obviously, which makes perfect sense. But no, to get this one right, you have to write the entire alphabet forwards, then backwards, then spell Rumpelstiltskin with the corresponding letters in the backwards alphabet. So the answer is actually Ifkovgrogpmr, which isn't even a word. To this day, we're still convinced the correct answer is Nick Stiltseltmer, because it is. And there you have it, 8 mind-boggling puzzles to make you glad we live in an age of walkthroughs and video solutions. Give us a like if you got stuck on any of these, and subscribe to Logitech G for more weekly features. Thank you very much for watching.